Hey everyone, theswiftscripter here, and welcome back to another video. So it's been a while for those who have been to this channel before, but if you're new here, then welcome. But yeah, I apologize for not uploading. I was just I was a bit too lazy, but I'm back and I'm ready to do a part 7 of this Unity tutorial series. I'm pretty determined to actually get this over with, but yeah, basically what we'll cover in part 7 of this tutorial series is the Unity user interface design and implementation. We kind of already went over this in the last part 6 of this series. If you haven't already watched that, I recommend watching that to know where we are, how we got here and all that stuff. But we're diving into one of the most important aspects of any game, the user interface, or you can just call it UI for short. This is how players interact with the outside, like core gameplay with menus, health bars, and score displays, and a lot more than that. Even though it might seem secondary to gameplay, a well-designed UI is pretty essential for creating an enjoyable player experience. So yeah, the thing about this is we got to figure out how UI works in Unity. So unlike other objects, other game objects, UI elements are actually managed under something called a canvas, which we already have here. We covered this in the last tutorial. We made a new button which displays this score text on the screen. But basically, think of the canvas as a special layer where all your UI elements live, separate from your 3D game world. This is completely separate. As you can see, it's not visible anywhere in the 3D view space. So to create a canvas, which we already did, all you have to do is right click on the hierarchy, hover over UI, then press canvas. Once you do that, right click on the canvas game object, the one you just created, and then create something like a text object like this. And since we already have it, I'll just show you what will happen when we do create a canvas entirely. So I'll just delete these two game objects, and as you can see, there was something called a event system, which I'll go over soon. But usually it's not frequent that you may just click on this. It's more frequent that you may click on any one of these other things like image, and the canvas automatically gets created as well as an event system game object. So you can create the canvas game object if you want, but you'll have to create an event system along with that. But to make it easier, you can just hover over anything else like the legacy, which is what I usually use. I hover over legacy, then usually press text, and as you can see, we got a text popping up here. Now since we already have that, I'm just gonna undo all this. We already have a score value text here. But when you select the canvas, right, and you look at the inspector, we'll see a property here called render mode. So this determines how the canvas is displayed. Right now we're on screen space overlay, the UI, which means the UI is rendered on top of everything else, which is directly on the screen. And then we have another option called screen space camera, which usually is if you have multiple cameras in the scene and the UI is tied to a specific camera. Let's say I'm just gonna add another camera here, and let's see, I'm gonna just go back to canvas and drag this camera into this. See how when you click on the main camera now, which is what we have here, the score text is no longer here, but basically this game scene kind of combines both views of the camera. This other camera we have, it displays the score text, but not in the main camera. So that's usually if you want to work with multiple cameras in the scene, but I'm just gonna undo all that. And lastly, we have world space, which means it will be displayed in the world itself, the 3D world. As you can see, I just moved it to a location where it's visible on the 3D view space. Yeah, now it's visible on your screen, but this is usually used for stuff like billboards or signs. But for most menus and HUDs, you'll stick with screen space overlay. So for now, let's just leave it as it is. I'm just gonna undo all this. Since we already have a canvas, we're gonna add something else called a button game object. And you can guess what it does. You click on it and something happens. And the way you move it is you see this huge canvas in the scene view right here. You can move it like this, or to make it easier, you can also click on this, put the button in a corner. So let's say you want it in the top right corner. You can press this. And once we do that, let's zero out everything. And we can then move it kind of in the corner like that. And yeah, there we have the button location. Along with the button, there is a text child game object. So we can actually rename what this button will be called. So we can call it start button or something. And a quick tip, always name your UI elements clearly so that, you know, it's clear to you what exactly that game object is. Because I'll tell you this, it's a lifesaver in larger projects. So I'm just going to right click on this also. And this won't impact the actual game object. It will just impact what its name is in the hierarchy. I'm just going to call it start button. It won't really impact anything. So if I rename it something else, you can see it doesn't have any impact on the actual game object. So I'll just rename it start button again. Now, back to the parent game object, which is this button object I want to talk about. It has 3 properties, which includes the image, which impacts how this thing looks. For now, it's the default UI sprite. You can also change the color. Then you can also impact how it looks when you click on it. Let's just change it to some darker shade. And the highlighted color can be something like this. I'll just leave it like that for now. So these are basically the color tints. Highlighted color is what happens when you hover over the button, and press color is the color that will appear when you press it, of course. And then we also have this other thing called on click, which is where you define what happens when the button is clicked. So now let's make the button functional. So we'll write a script that displays a message when the button is clicked. So in your assets, so let's go to the assets folder. So here we can just create a new script and we'll name it button handler. So button handler, boom. Now when you open this, let's actually delete all of this, and we're gonna create a function called public void on start button clicked. Here, what we want to display is just a message saying start button has been clicked. So this can be like the actions you want to happen within a function, within a method. So you can create multiple methods in this script to define what the button can possibly do. If you have another button, you can maybe create a new method called on end button clicked, and, you know, end the game possibly, something like that. And, you know, just have multiple methods like this to define logic for what happens when you press certain buttons. So the script is basically pretty simple. The method on start button clicked will execute whenever the button is clicked, and I'll tell you how to do that shortly. This debug.log outputs a message to the console for testing. And yeah, what we're gonna do is attach this script to an empty game object in your scene. Let's just call it UI manager for clarity. That's what we're gonna do. So let's be sure to save that as well. And I'm gonna create an empty game object called UI manager. Oh, that is amazing spelling. UI manager. And let's drag this script over. Now that we have that, let's go back to the button and press this plus sign to choose what happens. And then simply drag this UI manager game object here. Now you can see here there are 3 different functions that are popping up. So what we want to enable is the button handler script, which is what we titled it right here. So this is what happens when you hover over the button handler script. Basically what happens when you drag the UI manager is it shows the properties of this game object, one of which includes the game object itself. The other is the transform. Finally, we have that script here. So you can see here we have both the methods I added, but we want on start button clicked. So when you press play and go to console, you can see that start button has been clicked. Now let's create another common UI element, a health bar. Right click the canvas again and we'll go down to UI and press slider. And we can see here this thing shows up. So I'm just gonna add this probably at the bottom. And you can also see that this value impacts where the slider is. Use this for a health bar. So that's actually what we're gonna do. Rename this first of all. Let's call it health bar. And in the inspector under the slider component, uncheck the interactable so that people won't be able to touch or, move this around because this is just going to be the health that is displayed for the game. Makes it display only, and then make sure the min values are set as such to set it to 0 for now. So the max health can be whatever you want. I'll just name it 10. You can now update the slider dynamically in code to reflect the player's health. So since we already kind of have a health component to this, and if you want your UI to look good on all devices, ensure that the UI scale mode is set to scale with screen size, kind of like this. And yeah, that's it for this part. So we've covered the basics of Unity's UI system. By the way, if you guys really want, or if you guys want to see this UI health bar link, you can just, let me know. I can actually probably make a video on that in my next part possibly, or just make a separate video connecting all this together. But yeah, that's it for this video. In the next one, we'll explore audio and sound design to add depth and atmosphere to the game. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys all next one. See ya.